The film mode that is film noir contrasts starkly in a number of ways from what is considered classical Hollywood cinema. From its narrative substance to its style and even political messages, film noir provided a sharp deviation from the films which dominated the cinematic landscape during the heyday of the studio system. How do these differences manifest themselves in the films which define their respective modes of filmmaking? Stylistically, perhaps the most obvious difference between the films associated with classical Hollywood and those of film noir are the ways in which the films utilized lighting schemes. Consider the following two scenes from the films Bringing Up Baby and Double Indemnity, both of which show chance meetings between the central male characters of the films and the women who will eventually become their main romantic interest in the film.
Just a minute. I beg your pardon. Oh, dear.
You shouldn't do that, you know.
But what shouldn't I do?
Talk while someone's shooting.
Yes, but
Well,
that was
anyway,
my
I
toy.
forgive you because I got a good shot.
But you don't understand.
See, there it is, right next to the pin.
But that has nothing to do with it.
Oh, were you playing through?
No, I've just driven off the first tee and I
I
hooked...
see you're a straight.
I wasn't long, was I?
Not at all, Mrs. Dietrichson.
Hope I've got my face on straight.
Perfect for my money.
Neff is the name, isn't it?
Yeah, with two F's, like in Philadelphia, if you know the story.
What story?
Philadelphia story.
Suppose we sit down, you tell me about the insurance. My husband never tells me anything.
While both of these scenes show a man meeting a woman during the day, these scenes are shot using totally different lighting schemes. In Bringing Up Baby, the actors are shown in broad daylight, with their bodies and faces being completely illuminated, thus making their faces the main focus of the shot. In Double Indemnity, despite the scene taking place during midday, the majority of the frame is in shadow, with shadows from the blinds being particularly notable in darkening the features of the actors. As film critic Paul Schrader notes, such techniques are typical of film noir, which often uses lighting typically reserved for nighttime, even during scenes which take place during midday. Another notable difference between film noir and classical Hollywood is the way both treated relationships between men and women. We can see this difference clearly in the same scenes from Double Indemnity and Bringing Up Baby. The character of Walter Neff from Double Indemnity immediately, confidently, and overtly flirts with this woman he has just met. His wry smile, wandering eyes, and cocked eyebrow leave little to the imagination as to what his intentions are. Contrast this to David Huxley from Bringing Up Baby. His interactions with this new woman are entirely asexual, not at all flirtatious, and well-intentioned. There is no indication from this classical Hollywood film that sex would be within the first 1,000 things on Huxley's mind. The sexual nature of film noir is inescapable and provides another distinct difference between film noir and classical Hollywood films, as can be seen in the scene from Double Indemnity.
I can do.
The insurance ran out on the 15th. I'd hate to think of you having a smashed fender or something while you're not fully covered.
Perhaps I know what you mean, Mr. Neff. I've just been taking a sunbath.
No pigeons around, I hope.
The overtly sexual nature of the scene is undeniable, and can again provide a contrast between the good-intentioned David Huxley and the sexually motivated Walter Neff. However, it also provides an example of another way in which film noir distinguished itself from Hollywood at the time, in the way it portrays the female character of Phyllis Dietrichson. In this scene, Phyllis is neither modest nor ashamed about her lack of clothing, and is more than willing to toy with Neff's sexual desires. She is shown as having power over Neff in more ways than one. The visual subtext of the scene reinforces this idea. Neff is below physics and has to look up to her. The placement of the actors in this scene reinforces the idea that Phyllis has power over Neff symbolically. Contrast this to Bringing Up Baby, where Huxley and his female counterpart are shown on equal footing. Much of the differences between film noir and the films which come from the classical Hollywood system stem from the sources of the stories being told. Film noir has its roots in the pulp crime novels which emerged in the 1930s, whereas Hollywood's studio system was masterful at creating a factory line of entertaining, easily digested films. Consider as an example the plot of Bringing Up Baby. The film is a screwball comedy which follows Dr. David Huxley as he is accidentally brought in to raise a pet leopard. The main characters are wealthy, the situations they are put into are beyond silly, and there is a happy, romantic resolution. In other words, the plot of Bringing Up Baby is safe, entertaining, and could also be used to describe countless other studio films of its time. Now take a look at Double Indemnity. An insurance agent conspires with a woman he meets to murder her husband in order to receive life insurance money. He ends up murdering the husband, being double-crossed by the woman, murdering her, and going to jail himself. The plot is far from safe and far from easily digestible. Double Indemnity's screenplay was written by Raymond Chandler, one of the prototypical mystery writers of the era. His stories often showed the total opposite of silly, rich people fun. Instead, Chandler's stories, such as Blackmailers Don't Shoot, focused on the people that Hollywood films avoided, meaning the everyday people dealing with the Great Depression at the time. Lower-class citizens, powerful women, criminals, minorities, homosexuals, everything was on display in Chandler's writing, as well as the writing of other pulp crime novelists of the time, and allowed them to distinguish themselves from the conventions of the time. As these writers began to work on screenplays, a shift in focus occurred from the wealthy, carefree lifestyle that was typical of classical Hollywood films, to the seedy, crime-filled underbelly that was typical of an America where at one point, 25% of the nation was unemployed. These dark themes and pessimistic stories became the backbone of film noir, and, when paired with dark imagery, created an easily identifiable style, which later became known as film noir. Instead of the bright classical Hollywood films, both figuratively and literally, we now had a darkness emblematic of the feelings of most of the American population at the time. Thus, film noir, despite being heavily stylized, was an expression of real emotions and attitudes of pessimism during a time of great struggle in the United States.